Do you know what? I'm at risk of rendering our little bar series as being your after party of this old marketing because we mention it so often, right? It's like the child of this old marketing. Hello and welcome to our virtual bar, the Rose and Rockstar by Rockstar CMO, Velocity B, and a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. It's Saturday, January the 17th, and I'm your host, Ian Truscott. And in a moment, I'll be joined by Robert Rose, Chief Troublemaker at Seven Bear, for a blend of marketing and mixology as he suggests a cocktail while I pick his brains about a marketing topic that is top of mind for me. This week, having discussed websites a couple of weeks ago, we revisit marketing's obsession with declaring things as dead, as it seems that PR has been added to that list. But should it? But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back
After this word.
AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to the bar.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's the new year has kicked off with a bang. We are officially in 1930s Germany here in the U.S., and it's just the awfulness continues to continue to get more and more awful. It's, you know, I mean, it's a very, very weird time where the mood in my country right now is decidedly crisis-like, and business is good. So it's a very strange feeling.
Today, I don't know what you make of this, but today I had a nice lunch day out, and the waiter was we thought he was American, right? So we referred to America to him, and he goes, "Oh no, I'm Canadian." But he never said like a boo, or there was no hint of a Canadian accent. And me and my chum are very, you know, we've spent a lot of time in the US and stuff, and we're like, he's American. we shut up and stopped talking about America at that point.
Yeah, that's very good. Yes, that would not surprise me one little bit. It would not surprise me one little bit. However, having said that, in this guy's defense, and I certainly don't need to come to his defense, but in his defense, he. You know, what I find anyway is that Western Canadians like Vancouver, that area, don't have the accent nearly as strong.
All right, fair enough.
So if he was from Western Canada, say Vancouver or thereabouts, he might not talk about the about. And by the way, Americans that come from Minnesota and or the region they're in often do have that accent.
Right. Oh well, we better watch out for him then. Well, you've put me in my place, but we were wondering whether it was indicative of the state of the world currently, and
no, it's let's chalk it up to that, because that's actually probably preferable, right?
So
it is quite embarrassing. It is quite embarrassing, the whole thing.
So I guess we're going to be drinking.
We are definitely going to be drinking. Tonight we have a very classic a drink for us. I felt like old fashions were the trick here. Now I prefer a rye old fashioned because I don't like them as sweet. But so you start with a good rye whiskey as opposed to sort of a more sweeter bourbon. I actually do like putting the sugar cube in, and so I don't like simple syrup, so a proper sugar cube in there. And then, of course, your 2 to 3 dashes of Angostura bitters. And then I do a little couple of dashes of just plain water, or like a little splash of water, just to sort of get things moving around. And then, of course, your orange peel for garnish. And if you like the cherries, you put in the cherries or whatever. Those are optional, of course. But the key being lots of rye whiskey, right? So that's we'll start there.
I like mine with the bourbon, but then I don't usually have the sugar cube, I don't think. So
well, they do if they probably do if they're putting it if it's being put together at a bar for you. But if it's not,
the muddling,
at home, the at home version of that is just literally bourbon with bitters, right? So yeah.
and a big rock.
And a big rock, right? Exactly.
Splendid.
So it's really just a bourbon on the rocks with a little bit of bitters, put into it. But the sugar cube and the orange really do, I think, to me, really help make it more of an old fashioned. And sometimes that's just more of a pain in the ass than you want to deal with it at any moment. But,
hopefully you wouldn't giggle too much, but sometimes I just put a little tiny dash of orange juice in if I'm making it at home.
That's good. If you've got good orange juice, that can be perfectly and that takes care of your sugar too in many ways.
Yeah. I don't usually put sugar. Anyway, so lovely. I mean, I love an old fashioned, as you know, so that sounds splendid. But I do the bourbon rather than the rye, so I should maybe open my mind and go for the rye.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you know me. So today, being a Friday, because we record this on Fridays, I was listening to this podcast. You might be familiar with it, called This Old Marketing.
I've heard of it. Yes, I've heard of it. It's a ridiculous show, I've heard, but yes, nonetheless.
Do you know what? I'm at risk of rendering our little bar series as being your after party of This Old Marketing, because we mention it so often, right? It's like the child of This Old Marketing. But you did a special episode today for listeners that don't listen to your show about, you were talking about things in marketing that have been declared dead and shouldn't be, and those things that haven't been declared dead and should be. And in that first category, you mentioned websites, which we discussed a couple of weeks ago, just before the holidays. But you also talked about PR, and you said that people have been declaring PR to be dead. And I thought I'd pull on that thread. Why do people say PR is dead, and why shouldn't it be, Robert?
Well, it should not be.
Yes.
And let's take a trip in the Wayback Machine.
I should include some music now.
Yeah, you should put some music to this. But here's the thing. Going back,
of course, you're staring into the corner of the room at this point, right?
So you go back to let's call it 15 years ago, as content, as we were sort of just getting into the teenage years of social or of digital marketing, and social media was huge, and all those kinds of things, and PR, which used to be a very structured, very big piece of historically of the overarching business strategy. It was literally relating to the public, so the goal was to get coverage in magazines and newspapers and all of that, so that you could create a particular impression. It was very much of an old school brand idea, where you were trying to create, your relations and in some ways crisis management, in some fashion, and all of those kinds of things. Analyst relations, in many respects, both financial analysts as well as technology analysts, if you were in such a business. And so the goal of public relations literally became to interact with journalists and third-party media and those sorts of things. And so then content marketing came along, content came along in that vein, and basically in so many ways segmented off this idea of the need for having those relationships with journalists. And there was a crisis in PR for sure. I think most PR people would agree, in that 2010 to 2015 range, where, I think I even wrote a post at one point that says, PR needs some better content marketing, right? It's like the lip service being given by the big agencies at the time were, we're the perfect storyteller for the organization. We're the ones that should be putting together content for the organization. We're the ones that should be driving content marketing. and then everybody would clap and eat another piece of pizza, and everybody would go back and try and get their coverage books, thicker, and and talk to more journalists. And it didn't work particularly well. And it sort of stumbled along for the last, 10 years or so, and now has become really, in so many ways, more important and less focused on. In some cases, I know companies that are big, billion-dollar companies that have 2 people, in PR and comms.
Wow.
And maybe a PR agency that helps them do press releases and manage the corporate newsroom and all that kind of stuff. But it's a very forgotten practice. And with the sort of growth, and so in many ways, it has sort of seen the idea of, well, it's dead, right? It's a dead practice because you no longer need to do that. But of course it's not, because cut to 2026, where extending our content footprint to other people's audiences, in other words, being cited in news articles, being cited on Wikipedia, being cited in Forbes, being quoted, being, getting more of our articles out in op-eds is what is helping us be found in the AI engines, as well as the astronomical growth of influencer marketing, which is taking advantage of not just journalists, but other content creators that are out there building relationships with audiences that we want to have relationships with. So those kinds of things. You put those 2 things together, and you put together the importance of raising our own employees, brands, our executives, our customer-facing people. Well, now the classic need for public relations and corporate communications probably has never been as high in 25 years. And that's the gap. That's the gap that I'm seeing so often is that there's so many businesses that haven't put any effort into their PR and comms, no resources, lack of budget, lack of effort, basically outsourcing it in so many ways, and have atrophied that muscle to such an extent that it's really hard for them to get into these new things, such as employee branding, executive branding, getting their content out on other people's audiences, op-eds, speaking engagements, podcast guesting, all those kinds of things, along with the idea of also, talking to journalists and getting cited in newses and all those sorts of things. So it's a missed opportunity for so many businesses.
Yeah. And do you think this the skill of a good PR person that was diminished? Because I think that maybe social media led people to believe, I don't need a middleman fixer for this. We can just do it ourselves, right? And that's what the social media team is for. But actually, there is because today, right, it's when we talk about content marketing or any of these things, it's increasingly about human to human connections and networks, right? And that's what these folks are really good at, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Although, historically, we have let's talk about the PR agency for a second here, right? Which is where so many people, when you look at the PR agency versus your marketing agency, or your content agency, or your media, buying agency, whatever it happens to be, typically the number one thing of hiring your PR person was their network, right? In other words, how good were they, or how deep was their Rolodex in terms of connections to journalists for the most part, but influence. Let's just widen it out and say, influencers.
Yeah.
And so that became the sort of predication of good in PR, was developing that network of relationships. And so as a PR person, your job in most companies were focusing in on being savvy enough to know what would play in the media and what won't play in the media, and then interacting with your agency who would help you strategize getting in front of the right people.
Yeah.
So you would very often hire people who came from the industry. In other words, you would hire industry experts for your PR people because they needed to really understand the business and the media landscape in your particular industry, because that was what was key, and where they would have the relationships with people that covered your industry. And that's much less important now, rather than the idea of an agency and or skill sets that know one, how to grow personal brands,
Yeah.
two, how to actually develop relationships with broader sets of influencers other than the industry, sort of usual suspects. And three, the ability to manage a content process that is integrated into everything else that's happening in marketing, not act as a siloed, sort of
Right.
idea. And so it's a different set of skill sets these days for sure.
Yeah.
Other than being, like an ex-journalist for the industry, right?
Yeah. And that's also, I mean, there was a wave, wasn't there, of journalists coming in-house or working for agencies because they had that skill set, right? So you're saying that the old school Rolodex PR probably is dead, but the actual skill of the story being relevant and connecting that with the right people is very much what modern PR should be about.
I think it's not dead. I think it's just it's
Less
over,
important.
because certainly it's not dead. I mean, having an agency that's got a deep set of relationships and a deep Rolodex with important people can be extraordinarily valuable, but it's not. It's less so than it used to be, right? It used to only be that which you would hire your PR agency was, can they get you into the New York Times, right? Can they get you into the Wall Street Journal? Can they get you into the best industry magazine in your particular industry? And that's much less the case anymore, namely because no one has that kind of access anymore. But two, and more importantly, is, as you just pointed out, the rise of the other needs and skill sets.
Yeah. The other thing I wonder if PR has also been subject to a similar sort of view from the C-suite as brand building, right? In that it is part of the long of marketing rather than the short-term quick wins, right? Is that, sure, there is elements of PR that you can measure, but connecting that to revenue is like connecting brand awareness to revenue, right? Do you think it's also suffered from that, in that it's that short-termism in particularly in B2B marketing is actually what's killing PR?
Well, that's a good question. I tend not to think. I think we overblow the whole, because look, these days, I'm sure they exist, right? The CEOs, CFOs who basically still maintain the bumper sticker of, if you can't draw the line directly to revenue, it's not worth doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and maybe it's my own news and sort of content vacuum, it feels like we've won that war, right? It feels like marketers in general, and marketers and communicators, generally speaking, have been able to say, look, brand is important. It's as important as performance, right?
Yeah.
And so it becomes less around making the argument that, because yes, PR is mostly a branding exercise. It's a high funnel, sort of, it's almost so high funnel it's back to the bottom of the funnel, right? In other words, it's so focused on the reputation and branded trust in the company that it almost reaches right back around to loyalty again. So it can affect both, is my point. But I think we've generally, and you can hear the hesitation in my voice, I think we've generally won that war that most, at least smart CEOs and CFOs, are seeing the benefit of doing a balance of, it may be in any given time frame you're being pressured to do one over the other, but that brand marketing is the same as performance marketing. Ultimately, it's just with less direct corollaries to revenue because there's more steps in between. So it becomes this question rather of, they're still seeing PR and comms through the old lenses, right? In other words, businesses have been so focused on marketing. I have a client right now who is so focused on getting good and making sure that they're getting good at modern digital marketing that they have just simply forgotten about the two PR people in the back room, right? They've just, they just haven't even thought about it, right? It's like, oh, right, those people still exist and they still work on stuff, right? And the PR people, to their credit as well as to their discredit, haven't really been. They've been sort of like, hey, we're okay. We're you know, we're just over here managing the social channels. Don't pay any mind to us, right?
So I know that you have there's plenty of great PR type content on a great website somewhere on the interwebs. Where might somebody find that?
Hey, you'll find it at our lovely little wonderful cave on the internet called seventhbear.com, where we've been doing a little more. Got a new content strategy this year where we're going to start setting up some. You know, there's a subscription aspect to it, so we're trying to make it a little more exclusive on the super valuable stuff where subscribers get something that others don't. And we're just starting that in January, so that's the big thing. And but yeah, that's where you'll find all of our content, as well as on all the socials.
Nice. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, mate?
They'll find us on LinkedIn for the primary for the biggest piece. That's where I'm spending most of my time. Although complaining about my country on Threads has become sort of a secondary hobby.
All right, mate. And will you be in the bar next week?
Of course.
Splendid. I'll see you then. Thank you, Robert. I agree. It seems that human-to-human marketing, building network, trust and credibility is really important right now. Skilled PR, AR and IR folks, and I include analysts and influencer relationships in this, are now so critical. I'll include a link to the This Old Marketing podcast episode we mentioned there, along with all of Robert's links in the show notes, which you can find at rockstarcmo.com, along with links to me, our newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. So that's a wrap on our visit to the Rose and Rockstar. Thank you for putting a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and diving along with us. I'm glad you came. We'll be back in the bar next week, but in the meantime, a quote from a PR expert, Heather Yakesley. PR is about relationships, not just with the media, but with your audiences, stakeholders, and influencers.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.